Hey everybody, welcome back. Have Toothless here. Him and I are gonna, I don't know if he's gonna be much of a help, but we're gonna read chapter 9, section 4 of your history book. This is pages 294 to 298. The title of this section is The War of 1812, and we'll start on page 294. The War of 1812, American Diary. When the detachment, small military unit, sent out to destroy Mr. Madison's house, entered his dining parlor, they found a dinner table spread. You will readily imagine that these preparations were beheld by a party of hungry soldiers with no indifferent eye. They sat down to it, therefore, not indeed in the most orderly manner, and having satisfied their appetites, they finished by setting fire to the house which had so liberally entertained them. Quoted from George Robert Clegg, a British soldier in 1814. Page 295. War begins. Main idea. The United States was unprepared for a war with Great Britain. History in you. Have you ever been unprepared for a quiz or a test? Read to learn how the United States was unprepared for the War of 1812. The War Hawks were confident that they would achieve a quick victory over the British. The Americans, however, were overall unprepared for war. The regular army had fewer than 7,000 troops, and the states had between 50,000 and 100,000 poorly trained militia. Military commanders, who were veterans of the American Revolution, were too old for wartime. Support for the conflict was not unanimous, and some states opposed, quote, Mr. Madison's war, close quote. In addition, the Americans underestimated or misjudged the strength of the British and their Native American allies. The war began in July 1812. General William Hull led the American army from Detroit into Canada. Tecumseh and his warriors met Hull, who feared a massacre by the Native Americans. Hull surrendered Detroit to the British. General William Henry Harrison also made an unsuccessful attempt to invade Canada. Harrison decided that the Americans could make no headway into Canada as long as the British controlled Lake Erie. Naval battles. Oliver Hazard Perry, who commanded the Lake Erie naval forces, was ordered to seize the lake from the British. On September 10, 1813, Perry's ships defeated the British naval force. After the battle, Perry sent General Harrison the message, quote, "We have met the enemy and they are ours," close quote. Lake Erie was now under American control. The British and their Native American allies tried to pull back from the Detroit area, but Harrison cut them off. In the Battle of the Thames on October 5th, Tecumseh was killed. The Americans also attacked the town of York, present-day Toronto, burning the Parliament buildings. Even though Canada remained unconquered, the Americans had won some victories by the end of 1813. Page 296. The U.S. had 3 of the fastest frigates, or warships, afloat. When the Constitution destroyed 2 British vessels within 4 months, Americans rejoiced. Privateers armed private ships also captured numerous British vessels, boosting American morale. Setback for Native Americans. Before the Battle of the Thames, Tecumseh talked with the Creeks in the Mississippi Territory about a confederation. However, hopes for a confederation died with Tecumseh. In March 1814, Andrew Jackson attacked the Creeks. Jackson's forces slaughtered more than 550 Creek people, known as the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. The defeat forced the Creeks to give up most of their lands. Reading check. Evaluating. Do you think the United States was prepared to wage war? Explain. The British offensive. Main idea. Americans were instilled with a sense of national pride after the Battle of New Orleans. History in you. When have you heard the Star-Spangled Banner? Read how the War of 1812 inspired the creation of the national anthem. British fortunes improved in the spring of 1814. After winning the war against Napoleon, Britain was able to send more forces to America. Attack on Washington, D.C. The British sailed into Chesapeake Bay in August 1814. Their destination was Washington, D.C. On the outskirts of the capital, British troops quickly overpowered the American militia. They then marched into the city. They proceeded without a moment's delay to burn and destroy everything in the most distant degree connected with the government, reported a British officer. The Capitol and the President's mansion were among the buildings burned. Fortunately, a thunderstorm put out the fires before they could do more damage. August 24, 1814 was a low point for Americans. Baltimore holds firm. To everyone's surprise, the British did not try to hold Washington, D.C. They left the city and sailed north to Baltimore in mid-September. The people of Baltimore were ready for the attack and held firm against the British. A determined defense and fierce artillery fire from Fort McHenry in the harbor kept the British from entering the city. Francis Scott Key, an attorney, watched the bombs burst over Fort McHenry during the night of September 13th and 14th. That morning, he saw the American flag still flying over the fort. Deeply moved, Key wrote a poem that became known as the Star-Spangled Banner. Congress designated the Star-Spangled Banner as the national anthem in 1931. Defeat at Plattsburgh. Meanwhile, General Sir George Prevost led more than 10,000 British troops into New York from Canada. His goal was to capture Plattsburgh, a key city on the shore of Lake Champlain. The invasion was stopped when an American naval force on the lake defeated the British fleet in September 1814. Fearing the Americans would surround them, the British retreated into Canada. After the Battle of Lake Champlain, the British decided the war in North America was too costly and unnecessary. They had defeated Napoleon in Europe. To keep fighting the United States would result in little gain and was not worth the effort. Page 298. The war ends. American and British representatives signed a peace agreement in December 1814 in Ghent, Belgium. The Treaty of Ghent did not change any existing borders. Nothing was mentioned about the impressment of sailors. Even neutral rights became a dead issue because of Napoleon's defeat. Before word of the treaty reached the United States, one final and ferocious battle occurred at New Orleans. British Army troops moved toward New Orleans in December 1814. Andrew Jackson and his troops were waiting for them. The British troops advanced on January 8, 1815. The Redcoats were no match for Jackson's soldiers. Jackson's soldiers hid behind thick cotton bales. The bales absorbed the British bullets, while the British advancing in the open provided easy targets for American troops. In a short but gruesome battle, hundreds of British soldiers were killed. At the Battle of New Orleans, Americans achieved a decisive victory. Andrew Jackson became a hero, and his fame helped him win the presidency in 1928. American nationalism. New England Federalists opposed Mr. Madison's war from the start. These unhappy Federalists gathered in December 1814 at the Hartford Convention in Connecticut. A few favored secession, but most wanted to remain with the Union. To protect their interests, they made a list of proposed amendments to the Constitution. In the triumph following the war, the Federalist grievances seemed unpatriotic. The party lost the public's respect and was weakened. The Warhawks took over the leadership of the Republican Party and carried on the Federalist philosophy of a strong national government. They favored trade, westward expansion, the energetic development of the country, and a strong army and navy. After the War of 1812, Americans felt a new sense of patriotism and a strong national identity. The young nation also gained new respect from other nations in the world. Reading check. Identifying cause and effect. What were the effects of the War of 1812? Section 4 Review. Vocabulary. Define each of the following terms in a sentence. Underestimate, frigate, privateer, goal. Main ideas. 2. Specifying. Why was the Battle of the Thames important for the United States in the War of 1812? Number 3. Determining cause and effect. How did the outcome of the war affect the Federalist Party? Critical thinking. Number 4. Use a diagram like the one below to describe how the Warhawks influenced the Republican Party after the War of 1812. 5. Making connections. In what way did the writing of the Star-Spangled Banner represent the American spirit at the end of the War of 1812? Okay, guys, hope that was helpful, and that was a little bit shorter reading than the last section. Toothless, I don't know if he was much help, but certainly kept me company. And you guys, we'll see you on the next reading. Have a good day. Coakley out.